The battlefield did not look like a place where an army had stood only hours ago. It looked like the world had forgotten it existed. Daniel walked slowly through the empty field, his boots sinking into the soft dirt that had been shaken by countless footsteps before everything went silent. The air carried a strange heaviness, like something sacred had been lost, and even the wind was afraid to disturb it. Pieces of fallen armor lay across the ground, shining weakly under the pale morning sun. They looked like broken promises scattered everywhere. Daniel stopped and listened. He expected to hear distant voices, maybe the echo of orders, maybe someone calling his name. Instead, he heard nothing. No soldiers, no machines, no footsteps. Only the quiet hum of the wind slipping past burned metal and cracked stones. That silence made his heart tight. It was too complete, too final. The entire army that once stood behind him, thousands of trained, brave men and women, was gone, not lost in distance, not retreating. Gone. He felt like he was walking inside a memory that did not belong to him. Just yesterday, the camp was full of laughter, nervous jokes, and the smell of fresh ration packs being opened. Soldiers shared stories about home, about children waiting for them, about dreams unfinished, about promises they planned to keep once the war ended. Daniel remembered thinking he wasn't ready for such a huge battle. But he marched anyway because that was what humans did. They marched even when their legs trembled. Now those voices were gone, and he felt as if he carried all of them inside his chest. Each step felt heavier, like the memories were turning into chains. He forced himself to move forward, to breathe, to stay present, even though his mind kept drifting back to when the sun rose that morning and everything changed so quickly. They hadn't even seen the alien queen at first. They saw only the shadows of her army, tall shapes moving with perfect coordination. Daniel remembered gripping his rifle so tightly his fingers numbed. He remembered the sudden flash of bright light that cut through the sky like a tear. He remembered the screams that followed. Then nothing clear, only chaos, confusion. Orders shouted too late, people running in every direction. And now he stood alone. He couldn't understand it. He searched for signs of life, footprints, smoke, movement, anything. He found abandoned weapons still warm from use, crushed helmets and uniforms torn by something he didn't dare imagine. But not a single person. It felt as if the earth had opened and swallowed everyone except him. Daniel wiped the sweat from his forehead. His hands were trembling, but he refused to let fear take control. He had always been the quiet type, the one who followed instructions, not the one who stood out. But now there was no one else left. If he didn't keep moving, the story of this battlefield would end here, with him standing frozen in the middle of nowhere. He took a deep breath and looked toward the far edge of the valley. Through the smoke, he saw something shift. It wasn't the wild movement of an animal. It was slow, calm, almost graceful. His body tensed. His breath hitched. He blinked, hoping his eyes were playing tricks on him. But they were. A tall figure stepped out from behind a burned transport truck. She moved with a quiet confidence that felt almost unreal. Her shape was slender, elegant, and unlike anything human. 4 arms rested at her sides. Her skin had a faint glow, like starlight trapped beneath a thin veil, and her eyes, large, silver blue, deep like a calm ocean, were watching him with a strange softness. It was her, the alien queen, the one the world feared, the one who commanded an empire, the one said to be unstoppable. And yet she didn't attack. She didn't raise a weapon. She simply watched him as if she had been waiting for this moment for him. Daniel felt fear rising inside him, but beneath that fear was something else. A question: why was he the only one left alive? And why did she look at him with something that was not hatred, but almost sorrow? Daniel stood frozen, his heart pounding like a drum inside his chest. The alien queen did not move quickly, yet every step she took seemed to carry weight, purpose, and an elegance that made the battlefield feel smaller, almost intimate. The ground beneath her glowed faintly where her feet touched, as if the earth itself recognized her presence. Daniel's hands shook. He wanted to reach for his weapon, to hide behind something, anything. But every instinct told him that this time, fear alone could not protect him. She stopped a few meters away. The smoke around her twisted and curled, forming shadows that danced like whispers of the lives lost. Daniel noticed her eyes, silver blue, calm yet piercing, like she could see every choice he had ever made and every fear he had ever hidden. They weren't filled with rage or hunger. They were studying him, curious, patient, and strangely sad. "You are the last," her voice echoed across the empty battlefield. It was not loud. It was quiet, deliberate, each word measured and soft, yet it carried power. Daniel could feel it in his bones, a presence that demanded attention without threat. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. I'm still here," he said, his voice cracked, betraying the exhaustion and disbelief buried under his courage. "I won't run." The Queen tilted her head slightly. "No one would blame you if you did," she said. "The rest of your army is gone. You are alone. Why do you remain?" Daniel felt a wave of anger rise within him, not at her, but at the world, at fate, at everything that had led him here. "Because," he said, forcing his voice steady, "standing for what you believe is not about numbers. It's about not giving up." For a moment she said nothing. Daniel watched her forearms fold behind her back, her posture unchanging, yet radiating an authority that made even the broken ground seem smaller. Then she spoke again, almost as if more than one voice existed in the same words. "You are different from the others. They all sought glory or revenge or pride. You seek something else, but what is it?" Daniel's chest tightened. He looked around at the battlefield, the shattered weapons, the smoke, the silence. "I don't know if it's glory," he said slowly. "I don't know if it's victory, but it's not giving up when everyone else has fallen. That's enough for me." The Queen's gaze softened slightly, and for the first time Daniel noticed a subtle tremor in the way she exhaled. It was so small he could have missed it if he blinked. Something about her presence was not just powerful, it was human, or close to it. She was tired, weary. Perhaps she had not expected to find a soldier standing when all others had fallen. "I have faced countless worlds," she said quietly. "And yet, it is rare to see such determination in one so small, so fragile, yet so unbroken." Daniel tried to mask the sudden warmth in his chest, the strange sense of connection that was growing despite the fear curling in his stomach. "I'm not strong," he said. "I'm not powerful. I just keep moving forward." A shadow of a smile crossed her lips, almost imperceptible. "Perhaps," she said, "that is strength enough." For a moment the battlefield held its breath. Dust swirled around their feet. A distant gust carried the faint smell of smoke and scorched earth. Daniel felt a strange calm settle inside him, like the world had paused to witness a moment it had not seen in centuries. Then she stepped closer, not threatening, not aggressive, just closer. Daniel's mind raced with questions, but he could not speak. Somehow he felt she was testing him, not with weapons, not with fire, not with traps, but with patience, and with the quiet, almost impossible weight of presence. Daniel realized, for the first time since the army fell, that he was not looking at an enemy. He was looking at someone who had carried a burden far heavier than any battlefield. Someone who understood what it meant to be alone in responsibility, and who had perhaps hoped that no one would survive to witness the cost. And Daniel, standing with nothing but courage and exhaustion, was about to meet her, not as a soldier, not as a victim, but as the last human heart brave enough to face the Queen herself. Daniel's legs trembled as the Queen circled him slowly. Every step she took seemed deliberate, as if she was weighing his courage against every lesson the universe had taught her. He gripped his rifle, though he knew it was useless against her. His body wanted to flee, but his mind refused. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that this moment was not about survival. It was about proving something more. "You have no army," she said softly, her voice carrying over the emptiness of the battlefield. "No reinforcements. No one will fight by your side. Why do you remain?" Daniel straightened his shoulders, forcing the fear away. "Because someone has to face the truth," he said. "Someone has to see what's left and keep standing, even if it's only me." She paused, her forearms folding behind her back. The glow of her skin seemed to shimmer faintly, like the sun reflecting on calm water. "Truth," she repeated quietly. "Your kind believes in truth, yet often chooses blindness instead. You call courage what others call foolishness." "I don't care about what others call it," Daniel replied, his voice gaining strength. "I care about what I do, and I do not run." Her eyes flickered with interest, a sharp glint in their calm surface. "Interesting. A human who faces the impossible without hesitation, yet you carry fear." Daniel's throat tightened. "Of course I do. Fear is what makes people human, but courage is choosing to act even when fear is in your bones. The queen tilted her head, studying him as though trying to read the shape of his soul. For a moment, Daniel felt exposed, vulnerable. He wanted to look away, to hide, but her gaze held him fast. There was no anger there, no malice, just the weight of countless decisions, the patience of someone who had ruled and lost more than any human could imagine. "You speak of courage," she said slowly. "Yet what is courage if it does not understand the consequences? Your army is gone because they acted without caution. They believed bravery alone would carry them." Daniel swallowed. Maybe that's true, but bravery alone is still better than inaction. She studied him longer, then stepped closer. Dust swirled around their feet, lifting like smoke from the broken earth. "You speak boldly," she said, her voice soft, almost reflective. "But do you know what you face? Do you understand the burden of standing alone against me?" Daniel's fingers tightened around his rifle, though he knew it was useless. "I understand enough," he said. "I understand what it means to survive, to bear responsibility, and to keep faith in something larger than myself." For the first time, the queen's expression changed. The stern, commanding presence softened. Her gaze lingered on him, and Daniel thought he saw the faintest trace of admiration, or perhaps relief. "Humans," she whispered to herself, shaking her head slightly. "Even the weakest among them can surprise." Daniel felt a flicker of hope. It was dangerous, foolish hope, but it was there. For the first time since the battle began, he realized something. The queen was testing him not with weapons, not with fire, but with patience. She was searching for something, understanding, honesty, maybe even respect, and she had found it in the last human standing. "Stand tall," she said finally, her voice echoing like the whisper of distant stars. "Not because you will win, but because standing itself shapes the world. You have something rare in you, Daniel, something that cannot be taken by armies or empires." Daniel felt a strange calm wash over him. For the first time, he realized that the battlefield, broken, burned, and silent, was no longer only a place of fear. It was a place of choice. And this moment, this strange encounter with a being he had feared all his life, was a turning point. He lowered his rifle slightly, meeting her gaze fully. "Then I will stand," he said softly, "not for glory, not for victory, but for what's right, even if I am alone." The queen's eyes softened further, and for the first time Daniel saw something almost human in them, curiosity, respect, and maybe even a quiet hope. "Then perhaps," she said, her voice gentle yet firm, "the last human standing is not the weakest of all." The wind blew through the ruined field, carrying dust, smoke, and the faint scent of fire. Daniel stood still, breathing deeply, feeling a strength that was not his own, yet now intertwined with the presence of the queen. He understood that whatever happened next, the moment itself, the courage to stand alone, was a victory no army could ever take from him. And in the distance, the queen waited, her gaze never leaving him, testing not his weapon, but the very spirit that made him human. Daniel watched her quietly, the alien queen, as she stood motionless in the center of the ruined battlefield. Dust swirled around her feet, catching the morning light like tiny stars. Her forearms were folded behind her back, but her posture had softened, no longer rigid with authority. There was something in her presence now that he had not seen before, a trace of fatigue, of sorrow, and even loneliness. He took a small step forward. "Why do you keep fighting?" he asked. His voice was calm, though the weight of the question pressed heavily in the air. "Your army is strong, your world is powerful. Why come here to this battlefield alone?" Tilted her head, the silver-blue light of her eyes catching the sun. "Because it is my duty," she said quietly. "Because if I do not, my people suffer. But it is not as simple as you imagine, human." Daniel nodded slowly, sensing the truth in her words. "I don't pretend to understand everything," he said, "but I know what it is to carry responsibility, to make choices that feel heavier than your own body. Sometimes it's unbearable. I can see it in you." For a long moment, said nothing. Then she stepped closer to a shattered stone pillar and rested one hand on it. She exhaled slowly, and Daniel saw her shoulders slump slightly, an almost imperceptible movement that revealed exhaustion far deeper than any human could endure. "I have ruled for 3 lifetimes," she said softly, almost as if confessing a secret. I have seen my people rise, fall, and rise again. Every decision left a mark not on cities or armies, but on me. Daniel's heart thumped, a strange mixture of empathy and awe settling in his chest. He had faced fear before, he had faced death, but he had never faced someone who carried the weight of an entire civilization in silence. "That's a lot to bear," he said gently. "Most people would break long before that. You've survived because you had to." His gaze dropped, her eyes shimmering faintly in the morning light. "I survived," she whispered. "But surviving does not mean I am unscarred. There are choices I regret, decisions that cost more than I could have imagined. Sometimes I wonder if I should have given up, if letting others lead would have been easier." Daniel stepped closer, feeling the courage rise inside him again. "You are strong, yes," he said softly, "but strength alone does not define a leader. Compassion, honesty, courage in the face of impossible odds, that is what matters. You are not weak for feeling the burden. You are human, even if your form is not." For the first time, his lips curved into a shadow of a smile. "Human," she repeated, as if tasting the word. "Perhaps I have forgotten what that feels like, to be seen as more than a ruler, as more than a weapon of war." Daniel nodded, understanding the gravity of her confession. "You are more than that," he said firmly. "You are someone who carries the weight of lives, but who also feels for them. That is rare. That is worth admiration." A pause followed, broken only by the faint whistle of the wind through the broken battlefield. Studied him, and Daniel felt the quiet intensity of her gaze. There was curiosity there, yes, but also something warmer, something almost forgotten in the cold calculus of war. Trust. "I have ruled for lifetimes," murmured, "and yet no one has ever faced me with honesty like yours. Most see only the power I wield, the armies I command, the fear I inspire. But you stand and speak without flinching. It is unusual." Daniel swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words like a spark in the cold air. "Maybe courage is not about weapons or armies," he said quietly. "Maybe it's about honesty and choosing to do what's right even when the world is against you. That's why I'm still here." His eyes softened completely now, her light glowing a little brighter as if the shadows that had clung to her were lifting. "Then perhaps," she said gently, "there is hope yet. Even in the ruins, even in the loss, some truths survive. And you remind me that courage can exist beyond fear." Daniel nodded, feeling something shift inside him. The battlefield no longer felt empty or hopeless. Between him and a fragile connection had formed, not of enemies, not of conqueror and soldier, but of two beings who understood the weight of life, loss, and responsibility. For the first time that day, Daniel felt a flicker of peace, and for the first time allowed herself to feel something she had long buried, hope that the future might yet be different, even for a world at war. Daniel stood in silence, watching the alien queen as she drifted her gaze over the broken battlefield. The wind carried ashes and dust, curling around the shattered helmets and twisted weapons like whispers of the past. The quiet felt heavier than any sound. Daniel's chest ached, weighed down by the knowledge that everyone he had known, the friends he had laughed with, the soldiers who had marched beside him, the leaders who had promised protection, were gone. His voice broke the stillness. "Your army fought bravely," she said, her tone unusually soft. "But they were not meant to fall today." Daniel blinked, confusion and disbelief warring in his mind. What do you mean?" His voice trembled despite the calm he had been holding for hours. Silver-blue eyes dropped to the cracked earth at her feet. "I gave my final command to retreat. I wanted this battle to end before it began, but your commanders refused to listen. They charged forward, believing that they could inspire the world with courage alone. I tried to stop them." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Every lost comrade, every scream, every desperate cry for orders, the weight of it pressed on him like stones in his chest. You didn't want this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," admitted, her words carrying sorrow that made the air feel heavier. "I did not wish for blood to be spilled, for lives to be wasted. I only wished to preserve what was human and what was alive." She paused, her gaze returning to him. "But pride and honor can be dangerous, even noble. Your people believed fighting me would define their courage. They never considered the cost." Daniel lowered his head, a hollow ache spreading through him. He had been trained for war, but no training prepared him for the knowledge that his army had marched willingly into death. He wanted to shout at the world, at fate, at himself, for surviving when others hadn't. Yet nothing came. Only the truth remained, heavy and undeniable. I don't know what to say," Daniel admitted, his voice tight. "I wasn't the leader, I didn't order them. His words faltered, swallowed by the immense silence around them. His gaze softened further, and for the first time Daniel noticed a strange vulnerability in her. "You carry guilt, though it is not yours to carry," she said gently. "Yet here you are alone, the last one standing. That says more than I can describe. You survived not because you were stronger than the rest, but because you were willing to bear what others could not." Daniel lifted his head slowly, meeting her eyes. For the first time that day, he realized that she did not see him as weak. She did not see him as a survivor by chance. She saw him as someone who, even alone, could face the unbearable weight of truth and still stand. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, tears threatening to spill. "For the lives that were lost, for everything that went wrong. Someone should say it." His lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "Thank you," she said softly. "For acknowledging it. Most would never do so. Most would look away or pretend it was fate. Yet you do not. That is rare, even in humans." The wind shifted, carrying faint echoes of the lives lost, the fallen voices, the silent pleas, the laughter that once filled the camp. Daniel could almost hear them, almost see the faces of the friends who had once stood beside him. And though his heart ached with grief, a strange clarity emerged. The battle was over. The army was gone, yet here he was, still breathing, still standing. "And now," Daniel asked, his voice breaking the silence once more, "now what do I do?" Stepped closer, her presence both commanding and gentle. "Now," she said softly, "you have a choice. You can carry the burden or you can shape the future. Standing alone does not mean despair, it means opportunity, and if you are willing, we can begin again, together." Daniel's breath caught. He had imagined countless ways this day would end, none of them with hope. Yet here it was, fragile but undeniable, offered by the very being he had feared most. He nodded slowly, letting the truth of the moment sink in. His army was gone. The battlefield was silent, but even in loss, courage remained, and that courage, that choice, was still human. The wind blew softly across the ruined battlefield, carrying dust, ash, and the faint scent of smoke. Daniel stood in the silence, the weight of the fallen army pressing against his chest, and looked at. The alien queen's presence was commanding, yet gentle, as if she understood the heavy burden he carried without needing him to speak. Her silver-blue eyes held a quiet depth, revealing a truth he had never expected. She did not simply see him as the last soldier. She saw him as someone capable of choice, someone capable of hope. "I do not expect you to understand everything about my people," said quietly. "But I can see courage in you that is rare even among humans. You carry responsibility willingly, and that is uncommon." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I don't know if I deserve that," he said. "All I did was survive. I followed instinct, I kept moving, and I stayed alive when everyone else—" His voice faltered, and he swallowed hard, memories of fallen comrades crowding his mind. "Everyone else died." Stepped closer, the faint glow of her skin illuminating the broken earth around them. "Survival alone does not define you. It is the choices you make after survival that shape the future. And you, Daniel, are standing here facing the impossible without turning away. That is what makes you remarkable." Daniel felt a flicker of warmth deep inside him, a fragile light amidst the shadow of grief. "Remarkable?" he asked softly, almost disbelieving. "I don't feel remarkable. I feel tired, empty, alone." His gaze softened, her tone gentle but firm. "Being alone is not always weakness," she said. "Sometimes being alone allows clarity. You see the truth, Daniel, even when others cannot. You have the power to change what comes next, not for glory, not for yourself, but for the lives that remain and for the memory of those who are gone." Daniel took a deep breath, letting the weight of her words sink in. He had spent hours wandering this battlefield, haunted by silence and the absence of friends, questioning why he had been spared. Now, with her words and her presence, he felt something shift inside him. Fear still lingered, but it no longer controlled him. He realized that standing here with the queen watching him was not about fighting. It was about deciding whether to carry courage forward or let despair claim him. "And if I choose to carry it forward," Daniel asked, his voice steadying, "if I decide not to give up even alone, what then?" His forearms unfolded slightly, a subtle movement that seemed almost human in its grace. "Then you are no longer alone," she said. "I will stand with you, not as a ruler, not as an enemy, but as an ally. Together, we can face the consequences of what has happened and begin shaping a future that does not repeat the mistakes of the past." Daniel's chest tightened. The idea was terrifying and yet profoundly comforting. Trusting her was a risk he had never imagined taking, yet every instinct in him whispered that it was the right choice. "And what about your people?" he asked. "Your army, your world?" His eyes flickered with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "They will follow reason, but reason without courage is hollow. If you and I act first with honesty and strength, others may see a path that does not lead only to death. We will give them choice. We will give them hope." Daniel exhaled slowly, his decision solidifying in his heart. He had no guarantee that anything would work, that lives could be saved, or that peace could be found. But he knew one thing with certainty. He could no longer stand frozen in fear or grief. He could no longer allow despair to dictate his actions. "I will stand with you," he said firmly. "Not because I trust blindly, but because I choose to act. I will carry courage forward even when the world is silent, even when I am alone, and if hope exists, I will find it." His eyes glimmered faintly and a quiet smile curved her lips. "Then let us move forward," she said. "Together, Daniel, the choice is ours, and for the first time in many cycles, perhaps the future will be different." As they began to walk side by side across the shattered field, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the ruins in soft golden light. It was not victory, it was not peace, but it was a beginning. And Daniel realized that sometimes, standing alone meant nothing if you chose to stand with courage, with honesty, and with hope. Daniel and moved together across the battlefield, their footsteps slow but deliberate. The ruins stretched endlessly, a scar across the land that spoke of loss, courage, and decisions too heavy for most to bear. Yet in that silence there was also possibility. Every broken weapon, every shattered helmet seemed to whisper that the past could not be changed, but the future could still be shaped. Daniel glanced at. Her presence was no longer just commanding. It carried something else, an understanding that transcended worlds. She had led countless lives, ruled countless armies, yet here she walked beside him not as a conqueror, but as someone willing to act with reason, compassion, and hope. Her light shimmered faintly in the morning sun, and for the first time, Daniel did not feel fear. "Do you think your people will listen?" Daniel asked quietly, his voice carrying across the empty field. "After everything, after all this loss?" Considered him carefully, her eyes distant, thoughtful. "Perhaps not immediately. Many will cling to fear. Many will see only strength, only what they are told to obey. But you have shown me something today. Perhaps your kind can do the same for your world. Actions speak louder than words, Daniel. They always have." He nodded slowly, the words settling in his heart. "Then we act first, then we show them it is possible." They paused at the edge of a broken trench, looking over the remnants of the once mighty human army. Daniel felt a lump in his throat as memories surged, faces of friends lost, the laughter and fear and determination they had shared. He clenched his fists, fighting back tears. "I wish they could have seen this moment," he said softly. "I wish they could have stood beside me now." His gaze softened. "They see in you what they could not in themselves. You carry their courage. You are not alone, Daniel, even if they are gone. What you do now honors them more than any battle could." Daniel exhaled slowly, letting the weight of her words anchor him. He felt a spark inside, small but fierce, as if a flame had ignited in the shadow of despair. That flame was human courage, not born from fearlessness, but from choosing to act despite it. That flame was his alone now, yet it could grow. It could inspire. "Then we move forward," he said, voice steady. "We act and we do what must be done together." His lips curved in a faint smile. "Together," she agreed. "Not as enemies, not as rulers or soldiers, but as two who understand that the cost of inaction is far greater than the risk of hope." They walked side by side, crossing the valley that had witnessed so much loss. Each step felt lighter not because the past had changed, but because they had chosen to face it. And in that choice they found power, not the power of armies, nor of fear, nor of conquest, but the power of courage, of honesty, and of determination. As they reached the far edge of the battlefield, sunlight broke fully through the clouds, illuminating the ruins in a warm glow. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight lift slightly from his shoulders, looked at him, her gaze steady and serene. "You stood alone today," she said softly, "yet you carried more strength than the entire army. That is the essence of your kind." Daniel shook his head, a faint smile forming despite the sorrow. "I didn't win a battle," he said quietly. "I didn't even save anyone, but maybe I can start something that lasts. Maybe that's enough." Nodded, her eyes shimmering with light. "It is enough," she said. "Courage survives when armies fall. Humanity survives when hearts refuse to break. And today, Daniel, you have proven that survival is not enough. It must be carried with purpose." Daniel felt a warmth spread through him, not pride, not triumph, but clarity. The battlefield behind them would forever hold the echoes of loss, but ahead of them there was possibility. The future could be shaped, rebuilt, and strengthened. Together, they stepped forward into that possibility, walking not as soldier and alien queen, not as survivor and ruler, but as two beings who understood the weight of loss, the meaning of courage, and the promise of hope. And in that shared stride, Daniel realized something profound. The flame of humanity was not in numbers, not in weapons, not in victories. It was in the heart that refused to yield, even when the world had fallen silent. And that flame, small and defiant, would not be extinguished.